giveaway that a new job will be awful. Story 1, if there's a shitty box of donuts or some other in the break room once a week, and it's the only thing that seems to spur anything like joy in the employees there. Story 2, when the employers are hard selling the position or use the phrase make up to, they'll let you in on a secret. You will not make anywhere near that much money. Story 3, every time you request a personal day off or vacation time, your boss says it's inconvenient for you to be away then, and to ask again at a later date, you feel dismissed, undervalued, and not appreciated for the good work you do. Story 4, when the HR lady took me to a quiet room to fill in some forms at my first day, and then looked around to check no one was looking at us, and told me get out while you can. Story 5, every time a customer doesn't buy the most expensive version of the product you're selling. Manager. So let's talk about what went well with that customer, and let's also talk about what maybe could have gone better. Pro tip, if you get a little coaching session talking to every time a customer is shopping on a budget, you're in an extremely toxic environment. It will foster self-loathing, addictive habits, a feeling of helplessness, and weight gain. Story 6, when people that work there can tell that you're excited and start mentioning that'll change soon, when the job description doesn't match the actual job that you'll be doing, if they ask you to start early and burn a bridge with your current employer. Story 7, lack of safety regulations. If you get there and the first day notice that they cut corners with things regarding safety, it says a lot about the company and how it views its employees. Found that out at my current job within the first day. Hey, why is there no safety shower? Where's the chemical waste container? What do you mean poured down the sink? That is illegal. Story 8, if the interview seems like a pitch, the job will. If you hear the phrase work hard, play hard anytime during the hiring process or in the job listing, the job will. If you interview with more than 2 managers at once, the job will. Story 9, a few things I look for is 1. All the cars in the parking lot are beaters. Not to judge people on their cars. Some people don't mind saving cash and buying them, but everyone except a few mean there are some big pay divides too. If you go for a tour and you notice the workers look on edge or stressed, not a grin to be found, chances are it will most likely be a hostile work environment. Story 10, after a long and exhaustive job search, I finally got an offer, but the salary was a bit on the low side and I'd be taking a pay cut from my previous job, even though I was unemployed at that moment in time. So I called the HR lady at like 9 a.m., so I had a good chance of reaching her, and I said I'm really excited to come work there, but I'd like to see if there's anything additional that can be done salary-wise. She says, hang on, I'm at the grocery store. They'll get to it later, but then says, well, why don't you just call your future boss? I hadn't talked to the guy outside of a short interview and had been working through her the whole time. I felt uncomfortable addressing it to him, since I hadn't really interacted with him, so I tell her I'd prefer if she does. Also, she's HR, so she emails him from her phone, he responds with just no, and she forwards that to me without any comments, doesn't try to sugarcoat it, etc. Just a weird and unprofessional vibe, like they weren't even trying to fake like they had there together. Wound up spending 3-5 years there, and it was awful. It's such a horribly run company that's spinning down the toilet. Spent much of that time looking for a new job. Story 11, we're like a family. The last job I had, I was told this. I'm not surprised because meetings devolved to shouting matches that were initiated by management. Story 12, when they completely neglect employee wellness for revenue. The two usually go hand in hand when done correctly. Traditionally, happy employees make for happy shareholders. Story 13, when they tell you that per state law, they don't have to give you any breaks in 8 hours besides 30 minutes for lunch. Edit. Any breaks besides lunch. Story 14, on your first day. Someone gets fired. There are weekly all-hands meetings where the owner of the company rants about how shitty everyone is. The owner disappears for a few days. Her husband was calling the office trying to find her. Eventually, she was involuntarily committed to the psych ward. Those 3 were all on one job. Story 15, sits down on first day with new manager. The first thing you should know about me is that I don't micromanage. We're all adults here. Hint, he's going to be a micromanager. Story 16, high turnover. I was hired to consult for a large fitness company most Americans are familiar with. They wanted me to observe their sales call center. I told them I'd like to start the gig on a week in which they were starting a new training class, so I could observe that as well. The director looked at me with a puzzled expression on her face and explained that they always had training classes going. It was a call center of about 50 people, and the training classes that lasted 2 weeks were 30 people deep. That means that even if half the class fails training, they're replacing 15 out of 50 people every 2 weeks. Years later, I still think about that place and how depressing it was. Thankfully, I was only there for 6 weeks. I hate burn and churn sales environments. And nowadays, I choose not to consult for companies who don't believe in investing in the happiness of their sales force. Story 17. When your boss asks you how you would react if an authority figure were to get drunk at work and scream obscenities at you. Hypothetically, of course. Story 18. I was hired to a newly created position at a luxury car dealership group. The GM of the dealership I was at corporate offices were upstairs there wanted nothing to do with me and thought the VP was an idiot for making this position and hiring me. Basically, it was going to be scheduling appointments with new customers to install their license plates and tutor them on their infotainment systems. The first 3 days I was there, I was given no place to work, no desk, no computer, no phone, etc. I was given no schedule, no dress code, no tasks, no training materials. I was told to go figure out how the systems in the cars worked, and that was it. So I did that as best I could, accept they wouldn't give me keys to any vehicles. The GM just ignored me constantly. So I went to the VP to express some concerns, and he called in the GM to sort it out. As soon as we left that room, it went back to the way it was. I did what I could with what I was given, but if I had no computer or phone, how could I schedule appointments and meet customers? Without a schedule, how would I know when to come in? I quit that first week for 12 hours. I was over his BS. Story 19. If everyone at the job seems busy all the time, it means either of the two things: A, the company overworks its employees; B, the company rewards presence and not actual work. Either ways, it is not a good situation to be in. Story 20. They specify that they want you to be flexible with your work schedule. In my experience, it only ever flexes one way, which is me spending more and more of my own time on work. Story 21. If the interview was just too good, if they seem too eager to hire, it means they don't value my skills and only value the fact that a replacement is here for the job they're trying to fill. Story 22. You start getting department-wide emails from one person complaining about another person not doing their job. If you see this happen twice, start looking for a new job ASAP. Story 23. Let me tell you a little story about my first day on the job as a sanitation engineer. This guy who has been working at the same building for over 20 years says, "Hey buddy, come here, I gotta tell you something." Then he leans in and whispers in my ear, "I hate retards," then leans back and kind of looks around smiling. Funny thing was, this was my first day on the job at a mental hospital. Story 24 might take some heat for this, but Christian companies, eBay found them to be the most willing to over their employees and expect them to take it without complaint because Jesus, they can also be surprisingly discriminatory, almost blatantly so. It can almost be worse if you're a Christian, but not of a denomination friendly to upper management's liking. They also tend to be some of the most micromanaging places. Owners will be all up in the day-to-day business in very uncomfortable ways. They also pay for. Story 25. First day at the new job for a healthcare company. Went to the department, and the guy who had hired me had transferred. His replacement flat out told me they didn't want or need me, but show me where my desk was, and that was that. Worst year ever, as the company was going to get merged and had hired consultants to look for redundancies. People were quitting like crazy, and I went through like 5 managers. Then the merger failed, and the executives gave themselves nice bonuses for leading the company through a difficult change. People were still quitting, though. Greatest feeling was when I added my resignation to the stack. Oh, and during that year, I taught myself MS Access programming. This was way back in the day, and created my own internal clients to keep me busy. Story 26. I've only ever had 4 jobs, and one of them bad, but I can give a general sense. One, you interview with multiple people, but it's not a smooth process. Oi, Shirley reception. Where the is Jim? He's supposed to be doing an interview today. Oh, he totally forgot. He's in a meeting. He'll be out in 30 minutes. I've interviewed at a few companies that conducted hiring very poorly. I had several 2 to 3 hour interviews with a good 30 minutes of downtime, while the people who wanted to talk to me were found taking breaks to do stuff while interviewing me. This was pretty annoying, as interviewing for jobs is already exhausting and time-consuming. 2, the job description is either too vague or too hyper-specialized, unless you have a very unique set of skills in a niche industry or are applying for a general labor position. A well-crafted job description is an indicator of a good job. Otherwise, you could end up in a job where you're doing extremely boring stuff or stuff you're unqualified for, or you could be micromanaged and expected to do way too much. 3, the office seems quiet. If you don't hear phones ringing, people chatting, the buzz of meetings, etc. This could be an indicator of a company under stress. You could be getting hired to replace someone in a sinking ship, or being hired to replace an experienced, high-paid professional, and you'll become an 80-week slave to replace them. Story 27. People arguing in the main reception about getting screwed over by the boss by getting their overtime canceled at Christmas. Source: went for an interview where the production manager and employees were yelling at one another in front of me while I was waiting to go in. No one attempted to move away or quieten down. Nope, the out of that one. Story 28, when it's an inclement weather day and most other businesses are shut down, but management still tries to get everyone to drive into work, except for management themselves because it's dangerous. Story 29, this is a small one, but it's never steered me wrong. If your immediate supervisor refuses to get your name right in the interview or on the first day, they probably won't respect you as a person in bigger ways as well. Getting it wrong accidentally is one thing, especially if they accept a correction graciously. I'm talking about deliberately renaming you. I have an unusual and long but easy to pronounce first name. Every good job I've worked, hiring manager has said, "What do you prefer to be called?" And pass the word along to supervisors. Every shitty job, someone asks, "Can I just call you something else?" Your name is too much work. If getting your name right is too much work, your vacation requests, raises, and promotions will be too. Story 30, I left one failing company to find out the first day of my new job that the new company was failing as well. I was brought on as an assistant controller, told to familiarize myself with the books because the following day the bank was coming in to check everything out to determine how much longer we'd be around. Story 31, when you get that feeling in your gut that something is off, that gut feeling has never failed me. A few years ago, I applied for a transfer and spoke to the manager. My gut was screaming at me that he was in, but he said all the right things and seemed genuine and smart. 3 months after I started there, my gut was proven true. He would walk around checking off names to see who was in their cubes at weird hours. He yelled at us when half of us were gone at 7:30 p.m. on a Friday salary during a crunch. He berated me and made me cry on more than one occasion. I was lucky to transfer out before the entire department imploded. Always trust your gut, always. Story 32, the interviewer is selling you on the job more than you're selling yourself on getting hired. That happened to me a few years back. I got the impression the interviewer was stressed out from the workload of doing both her job and the job she was hiring for. She offered to help me rewrite my resume, coach me on what to say to the next set of interviewers, etc., really pulling out all the stops to get me hired. That's never happened before, and she seemed desperate to hand off the work. This will sound woo-woo, but I could just feel the stress in that office. Although it was a nice modern office and workers were chatting away normally, I just felt this pressure there. What drove it home was returning to the office at the job I had at the time, and I instantly felt lighter and relieved. The interviewer emailed several times to try to get me to take the job. I politely declined. About a year later, I was eating lunch in the area, and a girl stopped and said my name. She was super cheerful and happy. It took me a minute to realize it was the interviewer. I literally didn't recognize her because she was smiling. She was dead serious in the interview. Her face looked completely different. She sat down with me, and we caught up. She had moved on to another company and was very satisfied. She admitted she was stressed out at the previous company, and I was smart not to work there. Story 33, after you get hired, the higher management tells you and a group of coworkers to come up with our new mission statement. Design and flow of the office. No, that's your job, and unless you have kids, they don't understand that you need to take off a day due to family emergencies. Story 34, the GM of the donut shop hires you and goes over the dress code. No rings points to his rings. No watches points to his watch. No necklaces guess who is wearing a necklace. No bracelets and points to his bracelet. The assistant manager hated the GM. I wonder why. And by proxy, she also hated everyone he hired, so that was a fun time. Story 35, we're a high-paced, agile environment where we push the limitations, also known as you're in a death spiral, and if you don't burn out, you'll want to blow your brains out. Story 36, immediately get pulled into office drama in the first week. Darla management, let's give you the skinny here. People don't like Jash. Jash is terrible. Jash management, let me give you the skinny here. I'm Jash, and you should stay away from Darla. Carl producer, isn't Jash the worst? The only person worse than Jash is Darla. We should be friends. Tammy associate coffee drinker Carl sucks. Did you hear what he and Darla got up to last Christmas party? Well, Jash says to Darla. He says dash. Story 37, when the company is big enough that your responsibilities should be filled by 3 to 4 people, but they're only hiring one person to do it, covering morning, afternoon, and night shift. When your responsibilities per the job description keep changing and more keep getting added. When you walk into the place in 2014 and you think you've time traveled back to the 1940s. Story 38, serious answer. If the metrics you're evaluated by are based on things you don't have the authority to control, you're set up to fail. This is super common, very overlooked based on my informal findings. Story 39, when you sit down at your desk on your very first day and find a post-it note under the keyboard that says, "Dear God, no run." That was the highlight of the whole morning. The whole office was miserable. You could taste it in the coffee. I went to lunch, did not return. Story 40, your hours are flexible. That's why you can stay late to finish your work, aka you're salaried now. which means we can overwork you and not worry about paying you for it. Story 41. There is chicken wire on the sides of the staircases, and the windows can be only open up less than 4 inches to keep the employees from jumping through the windows or jumping off the staircases. Story 42. Some of you in this training class probably heard bad things about the company from friends who have worked here before. They're just sour apples who didn't like the job. Don't believe them. The extremely high turnover rate in the first 3 weeks paired with that should have been the dead tells. Story 43. When they tell you that there are 0 sick days, when everyone at the office is an immigrant on a visa, you know that they're going to abuse you when the HR director seems scared of getting in trouble. Story 44. If the manager is a disrespectful moron before the beginning of your first shift, I passed 2 interviews and then had a follow-up meeting to talk about availability. The conversation was on Sunday. I explained that I was unavailable Monday through Thursday due to coursework lists. My education comes first. He proceeded to text me every day, and if I didn't respond within 10 minutes he'd try to tease me with like, oh, so I guess you're not actually interested, or threatening to fire me. Before I had even had 1 shift, I didn't reply on Wednesday because I was pissed. On Thursday, he sent another message asking if he should contact someone else. I said yes, he should, given that I no longer wish to be associated with his company due to his poor representation of it, as I view it as a glimpse into the possible future of our professional relationship, and I didn't find his behavior professional. He sent me like 10 texts in a row begging and demanding I go to my first shift on Friday, or if I really refuse, I need to call his boss. I told him no. He could show his boss our text messages and let our conversation speak for itself. He tried calling, but I sent it straight to voicemail. He gave up after 2 hours. Story 45. I don't really have an answer, but can tell you how I realized my job would be awful. A superior had a talk with me, saying that it's best to avoid gossiping because that leads to a toxic environment, which I fully support. Next thing he says is, so, if Julia, she's our boss, not her real name, asks if you've seen John, our work leader, not real name, smoking in his work clothes, ID advice that you say that you haven't. For your own sake, we're not allowed to smoke in our work clothes because it smells like, and we're janitors at a hospital where there are sensitive people. This coworker then goes to light a cigarette and explains that John is not forgiving and will make your life if you tell on him. Something about for your own sake made me perceive it as a threat. Since then, this guy has become my closest boss and, of course, likes to gossip, which makes me wonder what he says about me when I'm not around. He also likes to explain to me how he makes sure I get to come in and work for them because he likes me, and how he's the reason I get to work for them at all. Furthermore, he's been asking me for money. I do not feel like I am in a position to turn him down because, as he has explained repeatedly, he's the reason I get to work with him at all. TLDR, projecting boss, extorting you for money will make your work experience less enjoyable. Story 46. If you can't get a direct answer regarding salary and hours, you're going to get over somehow on them. Also, I feel like the more people you speak to during the interview process, the less likely it is that the job has it together. Story 47. Well, I'm still in the interviewing phase of looking for a new job. One of the job interviewers I went to meet with acted like such a sleazeball. He asked me if I would pass a drug test. Told him yeah, I would. Continued on for about 2 minutes explaining to me the different types of ways different companies test for drugs. I didn't know they could swab your mouth to find this out, but he brought how Publix did random drug tests, and that would I be fine with him. He told me that testing my hair was a more slowly but more expensive type of way drug testing. Also told him I wouldn't care and would pass them. I learned there was more than one way to do a drug test that day. Story 48. When you tell them what days you are not available in writing, they hire you to work a specific schedule based on that, and then they immediately forget about that and schedule you for when you told them you weren't available. Bonus points if the manager calls you at your other job to ask why you didn't show up for the shift. Also, if they change your schedule from week to week and they only give a day's notice of your new schedule. Story 49. Real life experience. Found a job under the table removing and replacing gutters. Guy tells me he's been doing it for over 2 years now as a side gig. Meet him and his crew at an address. No problem. 3 guys in his crew. The one with the most seniority besides the owner. Only worked for him for 2 weeks before that day. Tells me he's seen 6 people quit or told to get lost. Worked 10 straight hours for $40. When he paid the other 2 $100, which was the amount we agreed on before I met him and his crew, needless to say, I reported his to the IRS. Story 50 was at a job interview where my future manager had to pop into the meeting room a few doors down the hallway to wrap up some performance review. He walked off calmly before closing the door and steps into the other room, furiously raging about how some member of the team didn't meet his targets for about 5 minutes, basically threatening his employment and flushing about how he could fire the employee without wincing. Afterwards, he walked calmly back into the meeting room where I'm sat waiting and picks up the conversation again as if nothing had happened. The walls were wafer thin, and I could hear every single word. Needless to say, I declined their job offer that day. Story 51, nobody has been there very long, and it isn't a new company. 3 people had their job this year, not a good thing. Starting a new job in 2 weeks, 4th job of 2016, sucks. Story 52, turnover rate. Ask what the turnover rate has been for the company. Ask what the turnover rate has been for the position. Ask about the seniority of the team. Ask why this position is open. The best answer to this one is the last guy got a promotion. The worst answer is this role is always open. Story 53, Jesus, reading all this makes me relate to my old job. Currently unemployed cause I couldn't take it anymore. Was hired with the quote, I don't need to see your CV. Can you start tomorrow at 8 a.m.? Began work and was told you won't last. We've been through 47 people in the past year or so. I lasted 18 months, which was impressive. No upward mobility or job security boss would literally make people cry and run out of the building. He's just so many things. Holy. Story 54, when the company refuses to give out their name, and you get to the building and it says Primerica, turn around and run. Run away as fast as you can. Story 55, I've always had the toilet paper rule. The experience of working somewhere is directly proportional to the quality of the toilet paper they supply. What it really amounts to is, if the company sees value in shaving off tiny amounts of operational expense, they're likely stingy in most all other areas. Story 56, always ask what happened to the person in the position before you. Engage the look on the interviewer's face the moment the question registers in their mind. If they look pained or disgusted, take that as a very bad sign. Story 57, we're like a family here. Not only is it delusion, but also, I've already got a family. Not looking to replace mine with another, a manager that says this is usually the same one that has insufficient family lives of their own. It also means that they'll expect you stay late and work weekends often because, we're a family. Story 58, what you thought was a pot of coffee in a break room is actually a bucket of leaky toilet water someone had left on the counter of the kitchen. Yup. Story 59, Fazbear and arraignment is not responsible for loss of property and or limbs. In case of accident in the workplace, a missing persons report will be filed once the premises have been cleaned and bleached and the carpets have been replaced. Story 60, 30-minute lunches. Also, if it's a call center, if it's a call center, then the job will 100% be awful. Bonus points if they tell you they're not like other call centers. Yes, they are. They will be exactly like every other shitty call center with shitty impossible metrics and shitty micromanagers and shitty 30-minute lunches. Story 61, my first day on my new job. Sitting in the executive briefing meeting in the morning, and it was announced that 5 high-level people were resigning after they got their bonuses. Story 62, making you sign a year contract. Must mean turnover is bad enough that they're starting to lock new employees down, or the pay isn't great, but we're doing what we love. No, I work to get paid, otherwise I wouldn't have gotten in a major debt for a 4-year degree. Story 63, your first day on the job, your manager says, have you met the department administrator? And you say, no, who is that? Then he says, a great big fat lady, then puffs his cheeks out and laughs like an obnoxious jack. Story 64, been to loads of interviews over the years, and hey race, some of my personal red flags. 1, the receptionist people around won't talk to you about the company for fear of being overheard. 2, the interview is completely HR lead, and the questions are all describe a situation where you dealt with a difficult person. 3, the hiring manager doesn't have a clear idea of what the role is or company strategy, also no knowledge of industry standards. 4, if you look at the state of the interviewers and they are disheveled, tired, and their morale is low, get out. 5, if the office looks crappy, that's a great sign that they don't value their employees. 6, any mention of we're paying less than market rates because of great experiences or opportunity. 7, interviewers avoid answering questions about why the role is available. 8, offices in crappy locations. I once did an IT job in the suburbs of Sydney instead, if the CBD, and paid dearly for it. In general, look at the mental state of the employees, because that will be yours if you work there. I just started a job with the first company that actually gives about employees, and the difference is amazing. Story 65, the building isn't thoroughly cleaned regularly. They don't care about their surroundings. Our bathrooms are nasty and stink. There's been the same 6-inch layer of dust on top of the filing cabinets for months, and the little coffee drips on the break room floor are still there after 2 months. Story 66, when the listing says fast-paced, fun-filled environment, or something of that mixture, basically you're going to work your tail off as fast as we can work you for as little as we can get you to stick around for. Story 67, I'm not happy in my employment situation, but when I got this job, literally everyone I spoke to about it said it was a fantastic place to work, People are living a collective lie at my workplace. Management is downright atrocious. Story 68, totally late, but if they hire you contract for what is basically a FT position, basically they don't want to give benefits like PTO or insurance, and they avoid the American law by hiring you through a temp agency. You end up shouldering the cost of any PTO, including holidays and insurance 401k. The place I worked that did this was actually a good office, but after 2 years of contract, not getting hired FT got old. Story 69, Scientology. If your boss's managers are in it, they are cultish in how they treat employees, and they discriminate against people that take medication. They will go out of their way to ruin your chances of getting another job if you don't play ball with them. Source: my cousin who didn't know the scene until it was too late. Story 70, if your boss is a 5-foot male GTFO, if you don't trust your boss's boss GTFO, if the company talks all about growth, but focuses on expenses GTFO, if everyone is counting on a leadership change GTFO, if you don't feel comfortable sharing an idea or an opinion GTFO, if your boss gossips about your teammates GTFO. Story 71, when your coworkers tell you to get out of there, didn't believe them, made it 2 weeks before I quit. Pro tip: the last place you try to save money is on safety equipment company doesn't exist anymore. We work in a dynamic, fast-paced environment that has great learning opportunities and greater visibility. We believe in being a change agent in the industry. This basically translates to your boss has high career ambitions and make you do the donkey work, so Husha advances up the ladder. Also, fast-paced means people will move up the ladder doing half-assed work, and you will end up running around and cleaning everyone's mess. Also beware of proactive engagement, where we want you to take charge so you are in control of your career. This translates to we want to train you on the job. You are expected to be at the same level as experienced members from day one. Story 72, when your leadership gives you conflicting directions, change your tasks in the middle to suit their own agendas, and then punish you for incomplete tasks you were pulled from and for not following their directives. Integrity and coordination of leadership does a lot toward making a good business. Story 73, if someone's got a sign in their office that says stay in your lane, it means they stick to ways of doing things that are so ancient they don't make sense anymore, but refuse to let anyone help change anything. I received a copy of a contract on a floppy disk. Run, child. Run far away from this place. Story 74, competitive pay. That means you're getting paid under 10 an hour and your raise will range from 10 to 25. The one person who talked a lot will get 40 to make you dream. Story 75, people lined up at the door at the end of the shift waiting to clock out at just the right second. Though these days I'd love it if I was still paid hourly. Story 76, when they start listing caveats and conditions for the amount of money you were told you'd be making. Just last month, I started and subsequently quit a job that advertised online that I would be working full-time and making 16 per hour. Then at the job interview, they told me that I was really being hired for a position that pays 12 per hour, but the potential to advance to the position making 16 was super fast, like weeks. Also, the work is likely to be full-time, but they can't guarantee it. Took the job because I needed it. Then it turns out that to get the 16 driving job, I have to pay for my own drug test and DOT card. Also, even when I'm hired for 16 job, there will still be days where I'm needed for the 12 job, meaning I'm only making 12 per hour. And then they informed me once I accepted that this was orientation week, where I'll only be making 11 per hour. Story 77, when you go in for your interview, and you're told to go into a large room with a bunch of people already in it, and the interview is actually a product demonstration for a vacuum cleaner you're about to be selling. Story 78, might have mentioned some of this before, can't remember. First job after graduation, the skilled old-timers in my tech department hadn't got a raise in over 15 years. The other two departments regularly got raises, OT, and bonuses that quadrupled their salaries. One of those departments was your typical unskilled labor. Only requirements a willingness to occasionally through the mud and sling some equipment around and drive a truck. Quite a few hadn't even finished high school. Still, they got OT as long as they were awake, plus bonuses. A few of them even hit 6 figures. Not bad for barely finishing the 10th grade. I stuck around to get some training and work experience. Spent 3 months on a training run just after I got married, so essentially got a paid honeymoon out of the deal. Didn't want to bail on the company right away when I got back, but a couple months after they killed our OT, while leaving everyone else's OT and bonuses intact. So I started looking, was pickier this time around, took my time, and got an entry-level job that gave me $50 higher salary right away. My boss was a good guy. He gave me an exit interview, so I gave him a letter that pretty bluntly outlined all my reasons for leaving. He knew the problems, but nobody at head office would listen. He forwarded my letter a month after I left. Everyone in the department got raises. Story 79 hired as a software developer and didn't have a PC for 2 weeks. After that, I got a 7-year-old POS and 14-inch CRT. It was 2007. I bought my own monitors and worked my way to management. Group never had bad PCS again. Story 80. I once interviewed for a job at a local cable company to be an installer. Typical interview for a 10-hour job. Can you read? Can you be nice to people? Do you do drugs? Can you drive? Etc. After the interview, the boss walks me out the back door, stops after we get out the door, and says, I want to tell you something. This job is you'll have people yelling at you all day long. Nobody is ever happy with our service, but I think you're a strong enough person to handle that. But I can't pay you over 10 hours. I noped out of there as fast as I could. Story 81. The person assigned to show you the office basics tells you after the boss has left you with them, I'm too busy. Figure it out on your own. Then on your first project, the team lead, same person, informs you that they don't need or want your input, since you seem a little slow getting up to speed and will just slow him down.